This is France. When it comes to a list of things the French are proud of, one of the biggest things on that list would have to be their wine. In 2023, the French reclaimed their place as the #1 wine exporter in the world, taking it back from Italy. Yet, for a country smaller than Texas in land area, France was also the world's leading wine-producing country in 2003, with roughly 4.8 billion litres produced. This brought in around 4.5 billion euros and an estimated 47 litres of wine are drunk per person in France every year. France's top wine export market happens to be the United States, sitting at roughly 19% of exports being destined for the country, about 2 billion euros worth imported. Together, the next four biggest producers have almost 60% of the total wine import market from France. But despite these statistics, France's wine industry is struggling. In the years between 2005 and 2015, the amount of land under grape cultivation shrunk from 895,000 to 747,000 hectares. This represents a 15% drop in production in just 10 years, due to the changing regional climate as exacerbated by climate change and a change in industry conditions. And the problems don't stop here. Rising concerns on climate change has made wine production slower. Health concerns and government intervention has reduced consumer demand, and small vineyards are being left out the races compared to the bigger names. Why has the wine industry taken a huge hit, and what is being done to revitalize it? This is a deep dive into France's wine. France's geography is considered one of the best when it comes to grape production for wine. They are blessed with a wide range of soil types like limestone, granite, and slate, giving birth to unique characteristics that are all concentrated within the final product. Combined with a mix of hills and slopes across the nation, this helps for better drainage of water, increased sunlight exposure to ripen the grapes, and protection from snow and frost. But that's not all. Looking at this map, we can see that France's major rivers, the Marne, the Loire, and the Dordogne, is also what helps make France the wine capital of the world. With the mild winters and hot summers of central and southern France, along with an abundant supply to multiple water sources, this helps grapes grow and ripen to the best possible quality. Though much of France's geography is favourable to grape cultivation, this hasn't been enough to completely insulate the industry from turbulent waters. The industry's first challenges of the modern era began with a scourge known as the Great French Wine Blight, which afflicted the industry in the mid to late 19th century. The impact of this blight was profound, and was particularly evident in the period between 1858 and 1873. This period saw roughly 40% of French vineyards destroyed by a pest known as the grape phylloxera, or phylloxera for short. The beginning of the blight is marked by the first recorded case of phylloxera, a near-microscopic insect species originating in North America, appearing in Europe. The devastation caused by phylloxera stems from its biology and the genetic vulnerabilities of European vines. As a pest, phylloxera feeds on grapevine roots and leaves, eventually resulting in plant death if left untreated. France's vintners were hit hard by the arrival of these pests because, unlike their American counterparts, European vine species had no natural defences against phylloxera. To this day, there are no known chemical treatments or cures for the disease caused by phylloxera, besides grafting North American vines with vines that do not have a native resistance to phylloxera. In doing so, new breeds of vines would transfer the resistance against phylloxera to their descendants. Initially, French vintners resisted grafting these new vines because they wanted to preserve the purity of their French vines. However, as the process of grafting became more widespread, it was eventually accepted as a method for culling phylloxera, and by the mid-1870s, the worst of the blight had passed away. The recovery, however, was long-winded. By the eve of World War I, French vintners still had not fully recovered from the slump caused by phylloxera. At the same time, competition from other countries was beginning to heat up. The end result was that French vintners no longer held a monopoly over their domestic wine market. Here we can see that France trails Italy in wine production, not by much, and the statistics here are based on estimates rather than concrete data, much of which did not exist at the time. Meanwhile, the destruction of the First World War devastated many of France's native vineyards, especially in the northern and northeastern sections of the country. The casualties of the war ended up having a profound negative effect on the country's labour force, as the country saw nearly 1.4 million military-related deaths in a country with a population of only 40 million people, almost 4% of the total population. For comparison, It would be as if the US, with a population of 330 million people, were to lose almost 12 million of its people to war within a few short years as the French had. Wartime regulations on the wine industry and the disrupted supply chains suppressed the demand and supply of French wine. This too would take a significant time to recover from. However, World War I had one positive impact on the French wine industry, and that was to solidify wine as something that was recognized as quintessentially French. Consequently, consumers developed more of a local taste for wines in the aftermath of the war. French wine during this period became a symbol of national pride and identity for the French people. The loss of labour and vines during the war hurt productivity substantially after the war ended. In the interwar period, the French government implemented what was known as the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée, AOC, or Controlled Designation of Origin in English. This attempted to control the quality of French wine and provide means for its certification. It became a market of wines that were not just produced in France, but branded French wines. With the onset of the Great Depression in 1929, demand for French wines collapsed. Consumers had less disposable income to spend on perceived luxuries like wine. But around this same time, the French public had also developed a demand for more sophisticated taste in their wines. This emphasis on quality over quantity would require a shift in the production and distribution of French wine across its domestic consumer base. Wine drinkers were beginning to prioritize a value-driven wine consumption experience, and vintners needed to adapt. It was also during this period that the phylloxera-resistant hybrids were cultivated to a wider extent. French vintners became more pragmatic with their viticulture. The pest that had plagued the latter half of the last century had finally been tamed. However, just as the French wine industry began to navigate the challenges of economic hardship and evolving consumer preferences, it faced an even graver threat with the outbreak of World War II. The French defeat in World War II enabled the Nazi authorities to seize French vineyards and highly regulate the sale of French wines. France's German occupiers mandated several other policies that negatively affected the wine industry. French vintners were required to sell their wines at a loss due to the Nazis' stringent price controls. The best French wines were selected to be sent to Germany under the supervision of what were known as Weinführers. Wine production plummeted from almost 80 million hectolitres annually to about 35 million after the French surrender. There are several reasons for the decline. The Vichy French government, the area of France that was independent only in name, taxed wine at about 20%, further damaging the wine industry. The Nazis recognized the significance of French wine to French identity and consequently attempted to suppress it. Meanwhile, the illicit production of French wine fueled the resistance movement as vintners went to great lengths to hide their wines from their Nazi occupiers. Once again, the aftermath of the war devastated French vineyards, and a shortage of labour plagued the entire French economy. The need to rebuild France's infrastructure complicated the recovery of the wine industry. On one hand, the government promoted the reconstruction of the country's infrastructure using Marshall Plan funds and did not dedicate a lot of resources specifically to the wine industry. At the same time, the wine industry benefited from this infrastructure reconstruction as French vintners began targeting an international market as wine drinking went global. While this helped to reach out to a larger demand pool, this globalization of the wine market also had negative consequences as French wines faced stiffer competition at home and abroad. To remedy this, the government introduced a financial support scheme for French vintners while aiming to modernize production techniques and improve the management of vineyards. Younger vintners in particular were especially keen on utilizing new technology to improve the winemaking process. And just like in the aftermath of World War I, wine production continued to increase as premium French products were once again in demand. We can see here that French wine production recovered significantly between 1945 and 1980, but has since declined significantly since 1980. This decline also served as a catalyst for increased state action to shore up the wine industry. There were, however, negative consequences. Support from the French government went predominantly to large French vineyards. Some culturally important, smaller vintners were left out of this scheme. The rise in chemical fertilizers and pesticides brought with them environmental concerns, as vintners sought to protect themselves from blights they could control with these products. Sustainability would soon become a critical issue in the wine industry. The rapid expansion of the wine market also came with a dip in the quality of wine, depending on the exact circumstances of who sold it and what exactly was being sold. This suggested a direct trade-off between the time and effort it takes to grow quality grapes versus grapes that grow and ferment more quickly. With more attention paid to climate change in recent decades, the carbon footprint of growing wines has come under scrutiny. 1 ton of grapes is estimated to produce 342 kilos of CO2, with the main emission sources being the use of fertilizer, transportation costs associated with bringing goods to market, and the energy required to grow the grapes. The health effects of wine have also come under scrutiny. Though it is widely believed that moderate wine consumption can have some health benefits, excess alcohol consumption has an addictive potential, is recognized as a carcinogen, and can negatively impact mental health. As these health effects have been made more widely known, so too is the impact on the French wine industry. For these reasons, the French government enacted what is known as the Even Law, which bans ads for alcohol from TV, cinemas, and cultural and sporting events, and requires health warnings on alcoholic beverages. At the same time, the government has sought to balance health concerns with the cultural significance of French wine. In response, the French government moved to strengthen AOC regulations and adopted an EU-wide initiative that aims to reduce pesticides use by 50% by 2030. Finally, the French government adopted measures that were targeted towards smaller French vintners. Not all of these measures are going smoothly. The wine industry in particular has long sought to relax the restrictions on wine selling since the Even Law was first passed. The requirement that warning labels be printed on bottles of wine has had an especially salient impact on wine sales. Vintners have also had to adjust their practices to rely less on pesticides, which has caused a mild disruption in the industry. French vintners have seen their share of ups and downs over the years. In 2023, French winemakers produced about 48 million hectolitres of wine in that year alone. But compared to pre-war French production, wine production has fallen significantly, down from almost 80 million before World War II. This precipitous drop has hit the wine industry particularly hard. Rates of wine consumption plummeted by 70% in the past 60 years. Vintners are being paid to pull up their vines, and the French government recently offered $215 million in 2003 to get rid of their excess wines. Meanwhile, fewer and fewer people, especially young people, are interested in looking for employment in the winemaking industry, a trend that mirrors other attitudes towards agriculture in Europe. Despite both recent and historical challenges, there are signs that the wine industry could be picking back up. In 2023, for example, France reclaimed its #1 spot as the largest wine-producing country in the world. Technology, specifically concerning drones and AI, is expected to increase the productivity of the winemaking sector. Overall, the industry faces a unique set of challenges as well as potential benefits. If it is to thrive, the industry will need to embrace adaptability, invest in research and development, and align its offerings with the evolving preferences of today's consumers while maintaining its rich heritage and reputation for high-quality wines.